This is A Course in Miracles. It is a required course. Only the time you take it is voluntary. Free will does not mean that you can establish the curriculum. It means only that you can elect what you want to take at a given time. The course does not aim at teaching the meaning of love, for that is beyond what can be taught. It does aim, however, at removing the blocks to the awareness of love's presence, which is your natural inheritance. The opposite of love is fear, but what is all-encompassing can have no opposite. This course can therefore be summed up very simply in this way. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. This is a reading from A Course in Miracles, Chapter 10, The Idols of Sickness. Introduction. Paragraph 1. Nothing beyond yourself can make you fearful or loving, because nothing is beyond you. Time and eternity are both in your mind, and will conflict until you perceive time solely as a means to regain eternity. You cannot do this as long as you believe that anything happening to you is caused by factors outside yourself. You must learn that time is solely at your disposal, and that nothing in the world can take this responsibility from you. You can violate God's laws in your imagination, but you cannot escape from them. They were established for your protection and are as inviolate as your safety.
Do you have any thoughts?
Mostly from that because God's laws are inviolate and that, I mean, they're happening all the time, it's that I need to take the response that, where does it say that about responsibility?
Nothing in the world can take this responsibility from you.
Yeah, which has to do with perceiving time solely as a means to regain eternity.
So what do you think the responsibility is?
I would say that my responsibility is to use time in wanting, is a desire to regain my knowledge of myself in eternity. It's my responsibility.
Well, the other thing about responsibility, basically, you have, what I hear here is that time-space itself is similar to a sense. So time-space is a way that we organize our whole experience. And it's that's all it is. Mm-hmm. It's a scaffold. You know, time-space, along with all of our senses, with all our whole physical experience, is a scaffolding with which the real structure that the scaffolding is built around, the real structure that we're working on is eternity, our original identity, our first identity, our only identity, truly,
yes.
Just like that. So this responsibility is, as I sit here, you know, I mean, I think this is really striking. As I sit here, I'm a person who's been, let's say, scarred by time and space. I've had my bumps, I've had my disappointments, and I've had my so-called victories. But one way or another, I've been hammered on or augmented, improved and ruined at the same time, yeah. by time, which is what it's talking about. I'll leave space out of it, but it goes with the equation.
Right.
So time has done that to me. So my responsibility is to realize that all of that is a simultaneous gesture of my sense of separation from the mind of God. You know, it's very difficult in a way to talk about it, but it's not even like erasing the things that mm-hmm. happen to you. It's, as the Course says so many times, they never happened. Well, what that means is that the whole, if I took each piece of the things that supposedly happened to me, they're part of a totality. Mm-hmm. And as part of that totality, there is nothing lacking in anything Even though it was painful and difficult, there was nothing lacking in it, according to the Course in Miracles.
Yeah.
It's my responsibility to recognize that I'm in a sort of a fool's errand with myself, to combine bits and pieces, basically the scars, the bumps and the jumps of my life, to combine them into a holistic thing that will reveal the mind of God to me. That's impossible.
Right.
Because the reason they were fragmented in the first place was so that I would never be able to understand the whole picture. That's why it happened that way. It wasn't an accident. I was intentionally, any given action that happened with me, whether it was something that happened when I was 13 years old or something that happened when I was 40 or a job, this or that, or accident, whatever thing that seemingly happens, and the depressions and the elations that go along with it, all of that is an intentional fragmentation of the unified experience. I chose that. And it's my responsibility. You must learn that once you learn that time is solely at your disposal,
Right.
to erase all those things by saying, well, of course you can't see where you're going on this map of Illinois because you tore it into 100 pieces.
Yeah.
You can't tell where you're going. You can't tell what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So once you realize you did that on purpose, so that you would have what we call an experience, that's our responsibility to realize, hey, own it. Own it. You came here with this. You didn't have to do it.
And also the responsibility that I read into it as well is that the Course says in the very, very beginning, in fact, it's probably part of our intro, where it says the time that you take to do the Course is up to you. But it will eventually, you will need to remember yourself in eternity. You will need to remember yourself as, and so, however, quote, many lifetimes, however long I decide to delay my remembrance of who and what I am.
The definition of hell would be an intentional, perpetual forgetting.
Yes.
Just to prove that God ruined you.
Or just to prove that God isn't there.
Right. Whatever it is, it's a perpetual forgetting, but it's intentional.
Right. Paragraph 2. God created nothing beside you, and nothing beside you exists, for you are part of Him. What except Him can exist? Nothing beyond Him can happen, because nothing except Him is real. Your creations add to Him as you do, but nothing is added that is different, because everything has always been. What can upset you except the ephemeral? And how can the ephemeral be real if you are God's only creation and He created you eternal? Your holy mind establishes everything that happens to you. Every response you make to everything you perceive is up to you, because your mind determines your perception of it.
I'm going to go back to the word responsibility, because let's say I walk into my room and it's a mess, and there's all this stuff all over the place, and there's stuff spilled on the floor, and the drywall's messed up, and everything is just a big fat mess.
Mm-hmm.
I can go through that room and examine and catalog all the things that are wrong with it. I can make lists. I can do all these things. But until I take responsibility for what I'm looking at, until I take responsibility for this situation, nothing can be done. Nothing can be done. And it's all on me. And it's said that God created nothing beside you, and nothing beside you exists because you're part of Him. This whole thing is that this mind of God, where there's not a messed up room. There's not these things going on.
Right.
Now, I know that that's a limited thing, but I'm just saying the sense of responsibility on my part, I don't know how I'm going to get that room cleaned up. Okay? Mm-hmm. I don't know what I'm going to do. But the thing is, it will never happen. It will never get fixed unless I take responsibility for it.
Right.
So take this sense of like, I'm not stranded here by some, it's not like I've been marooned on a foreign planet called time-space away from God, and that somebody's going to come and haul me back.
Right.
I have to realize, no, man, it's all theater. It's all theater. Until I take the responsibility for indulging in perpetual theater here, I can't even know what will happen next. Until I take responsibility, I can't know what needs to happen next.
Right. And in this paragraph, though, it's the recognition that nothing besides you, which is in God, exists. All of this that I consider existing, the trees, the plants, the cat in the house, you, all of it exists in my mind as that's part of what my existence is. I can't see through vision, which is true vision, where I see all things as they are, but also with the radiance of the light that is in all things, that unifies all of us. And so, to me, all of these are decisions that I need to remember myself as a holy creation of God, so that I can see God's holy creations everywhere. God does not change his mind about you, for he is not uncertain of himself. And what he knows can be known, because he does not know it only for himself. He created you for himself, but he gave you the power to create for yourself, so you would be like him. That is why your mind is holy. Can anything exceed the love of God? Can anything then exceed your will? Nothing can reach you from beyond it, because being in God, you encompass everything. Believe this, and you will realize how much is up to you. Right, how much is up to me. When anything threatens your peace of mind, ask yourself, has God changed his mind about me? Then accept his decision, for it is indeed changeless, and refuse to change your mind about yourself. God will never decide against you, or he would be deciding against himself.
Amazingly, think about someone in a room, let's say the smartest guy in the class, and he's learning chemistry. Mm-hmm. And all he has to do is learn chemistry. You don't have to do anything, because when he learns chemistry, you learn chemistry. Mm-hmm. You get it. If he learns it, you know it. So you go into the test, everybody aces the test because he learned chemistry, or he knows chemistry. Mm-hmm. The mind of God is this unified field.
Right.
And the only reason we don't have an experience of sharing in that mind of God is because of what I said before. We decided to learn to fragment things into bits. And that we have to, according to the Course in Miracles, we have to learn or get that, let's say, the Library of Alexandria that's in God's mind. Mm-hmm. The reason that we can access I have total access to the Library of Alexandria. God contains it simultaneously at all times and places in his mind, outside of time and space. Mm-hmm. For me to get it, because I have decided a priori to shatter my experience, I have to learn it one line at a time, one word at a time. Each line that I learn of the mind of God is a miracle sponsored by the Holy Spirit. Mm-hmm.
But it always can happen in an instant where it all comes back to you in knowledge in that instant.
Well, your head blows up.
No, not
your head blows up.
I mean, I don't believe it blows up.
No.
What does that mean? It blows up.
Well, when I say your head, your brain explodes, because the reason, this is what's weird about this.
Well, the ego goes away.
A lot more than the ego goes away. It's like everything goes away. Yeah. Everything goes away. Mm-hmm. The fragmentary universe falls into one. Mm-hmm. And you, to the outside world, you look like you're in a catatonic state because you have fallen into the singularity. You're just one. Mm-hmm. It's all over. Unless you have some fragment of delusions of that fragmentary universe, unless you can hold that as your lingua franca, whatever, you're catatonic. You can't move, you can't do, you can't think, you can't do anything, because you're all in all.
Yeah. That reminds me, though, of a meditation that I had in which
Jesus came to me in the meditation, and basically I was a block of concrete. And he chipped it all away so that all of me remained, except for one block of cement on my right foot. In other words, so long as I'm in form, with an awakening, there'll always need to be some piece that is grounded here in order for me to function.
Como no? I mean, absolutely.
Absolutely. It has to happen.
You have to be crazy. You have to be deluded. You have to at least be able to speak the language of insanity.
Yeah.
To be here.
Yeah. Yeah. But otherwise, your purpose. You're right. I mean, there's.
But just because I speak Spanish doesn't mean I'm Spanish, no matter how fluent I am. So you can speak insanity and still not be crazy.
Yeah. I mean, in order to relate to others, obviously, even Jesus ended up speaking in many, many parables because in order to reach people on a level that is a different level than where they are living, he wanted them to contemplate these various things about the kingdom of God and various other things in his period of time. And you and I have had the discussion that I think those times were even denser in consciousness than they are now, even though it seems like things are so chaotic now. I think among his people, or the Jewish people, it was quite dense in the way they were doing things. Anyway, that's neither here nor there.
But every single thing anything I can think of doing here, whatever it is, I only have the way of, well, what do we do first? Mm-hmm. And what do we do second? What do we do third? In other words, I have no way to understand a whole singular unitive way of, let's say, making a shelf or assembling a barbecue grill. In other words, mm-hmm. I'm not Dr. Manhattan mm-hmm. in The Watchmen. I mean, I can't just imagine it in my mind and boom, it assembles.
Right.
So you can see that even our best efforts, our best desire to move ahead mm-hmm. is ultimately the language of insanity, but at least it's moving in reverse order to put it back together instead of continue to take it apart.
Right. And in this paragraph also, it goes on to, I agree with that, and it goes on to remembering that I'm created exactly in the likeness and image of God. I am the same. I'm of the same essence. And therefore, nothing can exceed my will. Nothing is beyond me to know everything. Obviously, that seems impossible from where I am right now. From this little juncture in our conversation, I can't imagine that the knowledge of God in all of its grandeur is available to me. It blows my mind to even think that I can think like God. And yet the Course says only real thought is the thoughts that I have with God. All my other thoughts are kind of, they're made up. They're things that occupy my mind, but they don't really help me to remember the truth of things.
Well,
what do you think of that?
No, you're right. I mean, I know that there's no. The only thing that I can apply to it for myself is to. Sometimes I soften my gaze. It's like those little books. You remember the books that came out? I think they were in the 90s. Page after page of scrambled, images, and mm-hmm. it was some sort of digitized thing. And if you soften your focus and you get to it, then you see a duck, or you see Mickey Mouse, or you see a landscape. And you go, where was that thing? It's in there. And then when you harden your focus again, and it disappears, and all you have is this
little
rigorous
dot.
pattern. And I'm thinking that this world is like one of those scrambled patterns. And so that if it were possible, and this is what the Course is saying, if I soften my gaze in a certain sense, the unitive experience, the singular experience of what this is as life, as meaning, as love, comes out at me.
Yeah.
And in the same way, what you're saying about the knowledge, it's impossible for me to understand that I know everything. Mm-hmm. the only way you could possibly have access to that is by that softening of gaze, and not trying to lift individual pieces of knowledge for your use. It would have to be in the same way of nature, really kind of a contemplative, mystical experience of relaxing back, sensing the access to knowledge, sensing it, but not. It would be impossible to lift out, like, bet on Seabiscuit in the third race. You wouldn't be able to lift that information out, because as soon as you go there, it's the ego applying leverage.
Yes, absolutely.
To a situation. But you can know, like that guy, that Julian St. John guy, that website guy, I think he's there.
Yeah, I
think
too.
he's kind of sits there and just kind of knows everything, but you can't pick his brain about
how he knows. He's guided very much in what he's doing, and I enjoy his podcast a lot, or his YouTube. It's actually really quite informative. And he actually speaks a lot in the terms of the Course to me. And he doesn't use the words of the Course, but a lot of what he's talking about applies to what the Course is talking about. That you will know what to say, you will know what to do, and you won't be afraid to make those efforts towards those things.
Right.
Because the mind of God seems to be just your mind.
But there is the trust in the faith. There are certain tools.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That is the end of the introduction. And then do you want to go on to section 1, since that was so short? This is called At Home in God. You do not know your creations simply because you would decide against them, as long as your mind is split, and to attack what you have created is impossible. But remember, it is as impossible for God. The law of creation is that you love your creations as yourself, because they are part of you. Everything that was created is therefore perfectly safe, because the laws of God protect it by His love. Any part of your mind that does not know this has banished itself from knowledge, because it has not met its conditions. Who could have done this but you? Recognize this gladly, for in this recognition lies the realization that your banishment is not of God, and therefore does not exist.
When you were reading, I don't know if it's in here or not, I guess the term that, anyway, it's all safe. Everything that was created is therefore perfectly safe, because the laws of God protected.
And my creations, which are the same as God's creations, are perfectly safe.
Well, and then that gets into this thing of my creations. It definitely wasn't the shelf or the storm door that I put in.
No.
It's an extension.
Or a cake that I baked.
No, it has nothing to do with what my ego is. If I want to find out what are my creations, I have to assume that was a sense of extension.
Yes.
And it was a sense of love and a sense of, again, in that relaxed focus where I wasn't judging and I wasn't applying leverage to it. So there's a strong possibility I will never, ever know, maybe in some afterlife, if I'm curious, what I actually did or did not do that was a creation. I won't know. Mm-hmm. Because right now I don't have the eyes to judge what was really a creative act as opposed to me trying to make stuff.
Right.
I mean, I know for sure when I try to make stuff, I'm either so proud of myself, little boy putting his thumb, pull out a plum, or I sink into a depression because I'm so worthless. I can't even, can't even fill in the blank, Can't even do that, can you? Mm-hmm. So I swing back and forth between feeling like, oh, now I'm on the road to mastering this or that or accomplishment, and then on the other hand, wow, what a worthless chump. You can't do anything. And that's the world I play in. None of that's creation, and there's no creation in any of it.
No, it's all made.
Right. But even in spite of that, those are my judgments. And I don't know that any given action I did that created depression for me or sense of elation or accomplishment for me was in fact an extension We don't know. Like, as an example, let's say I am vulnerable, and I do this thing, and it throws me into a depression. My vulnerable state, in the mind of God, that vulnerable state is used by God. Now, bad word, but used by God, or it's useful for God to help someone else. Sometimes it helps. I know it sounds crazy, but it helps another person to see someone down.
Absolutely.
It helps them to see them humbled. It doesn't necessarily help to see them crushed or defeated, but I know myself. Many times I've warmed and felt sensitive and felt a genuine kind of a love for somebody when I saw them in a down and out state. Their humanity was more available to me. So I'm not saying they need to be there so that I can feel good about myself. I'm just saying
oftentimes it depends on the personalities. It's where their ego sometimes gets more humbled, and they're more willing to hear something outside of their own narrative of things, and so they seem more accessible. Let's just put it that way. A person sometimes seems more accessible, particularly if a person has a very strong or arrogant type of personality. It's only in those moments that you can actually say, oh, there you are. I was wondering when I could reach you, because they're kind of pumped up in themselves. And so, I've met those same kind of moments where, in a person's vulnerability, it seems like there is sharing that goes on at another level.
So, in a sense, see, that is a sharing, right? Let's say I'm in a situation that seems challenging. Either I feel like I'm having to knuckle down on somebody, or I feel like I'm being knuckled down on, or I feel like I'm in a failure position and I feel like the other is judging me. I can be in those kinds of dynamics. And it says, who could have done this but you? Recognize this gladly, for in this recognition lies the realization that your banishment, in other words, my depression, or my isolation because I'm better than everybody else, whatever that isolation is, it's not of God. Therefore, it doesn't exist.
Right.
So that's something I'm doing again with that fragmented viewpoint. But in fact, reality with a capital R continues. Yeah. One egoic monkey don't stop nor show.
Right. Exactly. I agree. And you're at home in God, dreaming of exile, but perfectly capable of awakening to reality. Is it your decision to do so? You recognize from your own experience that what you see in dreams you think is real while you are asleep. Yet the instant you waken, you realize that everything that seemed to happen in the dream did not happen at all. You do not think this strange, even though all the laws of what you awaken to were violated while you slept. Is it not possible that you merely shifted from one dream to another without really waking?
Well, the question, is the reality? Yes, absolutely. It's one dream to another. There's that philosophical, metaphysical game that people play of what's real and what's not. But the thing is, absolutely, you're in a dream state, and certain things are possible. There are certain suspensions, and yet you're not unlimited. You can't say, well, I'm going to fly around the room or something in your dream. You are limited by a certain kind of time and space. And it's only upon waking you realize, oh, I've jumped over a wall that was 12 feet tall, or the crazy mad dog turned into something else. That these things happen. They violate the laws of nature, physics, science.
And I guess I didn't follow. I think those happen in my nighttime dreams, and then
in the nighttime dream. That's what I'm saying. Is that in a nighttime dream you can have these metamorphoses, you can have all these extraordinary powers.
And then I wake up and I think that I'm awake, but I'm actually just waking to another dream.
Yeah, I'm going back and forth between, let's say, which is kind of beautiful in a way. When you really think about the idea of being awake. Being substantially different than being asleep or dreaming. And if we said, well, actually, it's not substantially different. And that's, again, taking personal responsibility. I have declared it to be substantially different, but it's not. That the weird suspension of certain physical laws of this world in that world, in that I do the same thing with the laws of God. So that there are these different, and then the Course in Miracles, it talks about the happy dream later on. So the happy dream is the last step before experiencing the mind of God. But it is a dream. And it's a place where miracles are readily accessible and things are copacetic and things happen a certain way. It's a happy, So it feels like a possibility as a reflection, to just say, like last night I had tons of dreams about swimming pools, and RFK Jr. was in it, and all these different people. And in fact, there was a swimming pool on the surface, and there was a swimming pool underneath that one that was sort of quieter and colder. There was one that was warmer. And at some point, RFK is stripped down to his underwear, and he kind of says, I know this isn't very, since I'm running for president, this isn't really politically correct, He jumps in the water, and I said, God, the guy's got ripped abs. I'm thinking this in the dream.
You've been watching too many YouTubes.
Anyway, but what I'm saying is that I was in that cohesive world in the dream. And now I wake up and say, it's absurd. I mean, can you imagine if RFK was in the room here with us with ripped abs in his underwear? You think, well, I'm in a nightmare. This is some weird thing that happened. So if I would realize that I'm in a rule-bound state in both places, and that there will yet be another rule-bound state of manufactured rules. They aren't gods, but they are, Anyway, it's just a thought. It's a thought to level out the idea that this is somehow more aware than a dream state. Maybe it's not. Yeah.
I mean, after all, all the lessons start with I make meaning out of a meaningless world. And you got to work it all from there. The other thing I liked about this paragraph is it talks about dreaming of exile. Because even in one of the sayings that we do on the rosary has to do with being exiled. And I always think about that. I always think about the feeling like I'm exiled from God here, like it's going to take death before I can find my unification in some heavenly realm or whatever. But so long as I'm here, God can feel very far away, like I'm separate from it. I mean, I can know through various experiences that I had that that's not true, but in my daily experience, I just don't have the sense of it being around me all the time.
Well, and yet, the deal is, if you have a desire, a strong desire, to really notice, the Course is saying again, the reason you feel separate is because there's not a desire to notice God.
Right. It's true. Because it takes wanting to be more in a now space.
Well, you still don't trust him. He might ask you to do stuff that you wouldn't do yourself. You know better.
And
no, really.
No, I know.
That's why we don't do it, because we think we know better.
Right. No, that's true. That's true.
What if God said, sell everything you own and come follow me? And the rich young man walked away sad. Yeah. We do it every day.
Yeah, we do. Paragraph 3. Would you bother to reconcile what happened in conflicting dreams, or would you dismiss both together if you discovered that reality is in accord with neither? You do not remember being awake. When you hear the Holy Spirit, you may feel better, because loving then seems possible to you. But you do not remember yet that it once was so. And it is in this remembering that you will know it again. You will know it can be so again. What is possible has not yet been accomplished. Yet what has once been is so now, if it is eternal. When you remember, you will know that what you remember is eternal and therefore is now.
There's no way to know. There's no way for the time-space brain structure, perceptive mechanism to know what is real. There's no way to know what's real so that we can be reassured that when people are being blown to bits, or that things are happening in airstrikes, or the GI lost his leg in a landmine, or whatever,
or even personal things where things are happening to your own body, or you have a loss of a kid or a parent.
Absolutely. Or the cold is coming on. You go, oh, well, here it comes again. And whatever these things are, there's no way to see beyond these things. And I don't mean to be trite, but with the eyes, with the perceptual mechanism. And that's what we feel like that's all we really have, is that perceptual mechanism. And the thing is, I'm afraid to relax the perceptual mechanism. I'm afraid to lay that down. As Jesus asked the rich young man, give up everything you have. I'm afraid to give up my wealth of understanding things in the time space that we're in, because I'm afraid I'm going to die. Right. I'm afraid it's going to go south. I'm afraid I'm going to miss an opportunity to fix it, make more money, be happier.
Yeah.
And all of that is in this mechanism. And to say you're going to be better off by just laying that stuff down and not doing it, there's not going to be anyone there to prove it to you, because all of the conditions of this time space we're in are self-referential. It's going to be very, very difficult to convince somebody that a person living in a ghetto, that's on food stamps or whatever, has it better than Oprah Winfrey. It's going to be very, very difficult to convince them. You can only say it in platitudes or in principle, but it's difficult to perceive it directly unless you're inside Oprah Winfrey's skin, and then you're inside that person's skin, and you're comparing what's happening within their worlds. In other words, I don't have the equipment to see those things.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, we can't see the eternal self, and that it actually would be the same if you could actually see inside of it as God's eyes. You would see that the same thing that is in the person who seems to be in the ghetto is the same thing that's in Oprah Winfrey.
And the thing is, there's like you said, sometimes I feel so far away from God. Well, I mean, there's a lot of benefit to being far away from God, because then I can blame him for stuff.
Right.
I can say, well, that didn't work out because it wasn't in the cards. It was fate. I didn't have the genetics. Well, you have a way of blaming. But if you are in the mind of God and you say all of this is this unified experience of complete perfection and wisdom and all this kind of stuff, well, you just don't even want to go there, because then you think, oh yeah, well, sir, how's Hiroshima and Nagasaki part of the mind of God? I'll tell you what, we just don't have the tools to understand anything.
And yet we have the tools to understand.
Well, that's what it's saying.
Yeah, it says that we can find it.
I always felt sorry for the rich young man, because Jesus says, I've done all this great stuff. That's what the rich young man says to Jesus. He says, I've done all this great stuff. What else must I do to be perfect? And Jesus said, well, it's easy. Just give up everything you have and come follow me. That's it. And he went away sad. Well, I felt sorry for the guy, because it's like, well, he's already being pretty good. Yeah. Why don't you give him a break? Say, nah, you're okay. You're good. You're good.
Because Jesus wants him to know the full kingdom of God. And he knows that being who actually loves all that he's doing is...
He asked for perfection. He didn't say, Jesus, what do I need to do to be pretty good? Jesus would say, well, you already are pretty good. That's why you're here. You're great.
Jesus wasn't looking for perfection from him.
But the guy asked.
I know.
What must I do?
Okay, I know.
I think I'd have to go look, but I think he said, what must I do to be perfect?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Or what must I do to be better than I am, or whatever. And Jesus said, well, it's easy, but I don't think you want to do it. And even the apostles recognized, I think I might be mixing my stories, but, the apostles then said, holy cow, Jesus, who can make it? I mean, who can make it through to the kingdom of heaven? if Jesus said it's impossible for a rich man. In other words, it's impossible for me. Not rich, not with money. He's not talking about money.
Right.
He's talking about this perceptual baggage.
Right.
You can't get to heaven with your perceptual baggage.
That's right.
And they said, well, what am I supposed to do about it? I mean, this is what I got. This is the way it's
Give
set
it
up. No, and Jesus said, anything's possible for God. Anything is possible for God. Impossible for you, possible for God.
Yes.
So, anyway, that's enough.
Okay. And one more paragraph. Paragraph 4. You will remember everything the instant you desire it wholly. For if to desire wholly is to create, you will have willed away the separation, returning your mind simultaneously to your Creator and your creations. Knowing them, you will have no wish to sleep, but only the desire to waken and be glad. Dreams will be impossible because you will want only truth, and being at last your will, it will be yours.
So this is interesting because it says this word, desire it wholly. It doesn't say desire it passionately or desire good things. It just says desire it. You'll remember everything the instant you desire it wholly. Desire what? To remember everything.
And to desire wholly is to create.
Right.
To desire wholly is to create. That's a hard concept for me to get around, actually. To desire wholly is to create.
So what is it? Okay, well, let's see. What is to desire wholly? What does it mean to desire?
Without reservation, with nothing in my way. The desire has to be whole, where I don't have a fraction of wanting something else in the picture.
As you said that, I had a picture within myself of, yes, it's for me to desire it fully within myself, but it's also to desire wholly from the outside. In other words, it's impossible to have a desire that's focused on some aspect or something. The desire has to be focused on the fullness. So you've got wholeness out there, and I've got wholeness within my own. In other words, in yoga they call it the objects. The objects of sense are out there, and then the objects of sense, and then the senses are within me. So I have the senses in me. The objects of sense are out there. The fullness, the wholeness that it's talking about is whole on both sides of that equation.
Yes.
In other words, I don't want something, if I want happiness wholly, it's not just for the Palestinians. It's not just for the Jews.
Right.
It's not just for the Russians. It's not just for the patriots. It's not just for the some family or another. It's for myself. There's a sense of expanding it. That's why it's creative.
Yeah.
If I then, because I'm in full extension, now I'm truly thinking with the mind of God, because God never ever wants anything for one particular faction or another. Everything is a constant creation at once.
My healing is the healing of others. The healing of others is the healing of me. So it is reflective in that, and to desire wholly.
So what does it look like now?
The kingdom of God, to desire wholly, to be in remembrance of God, is to desire it not only for myself, but to desire for all of creation.
So just for kicks, just before we end, what do you think specifically in this situation we're in the world, in the world that's unfolding in front of us, where there's you and I, there's ideological gaps between people, there's lifestyle differences, there's a different understanding between what's happy and what's not happy. So there's a natural tendency to hope that my kith and kin, my tribe, the people that are of like mind with me, are happy. And there's a desire that those who see differently than me actually see it like I do.
Yeah.
There's a desire.
Or that they suffer. I mean,
one or the other,
yeah.
right? Well,
I
but
mean,
let's say
there is this thing that happens. It's like
But let's say
we do create those kind of separations.
But let's say I'm compassionate.
Okay.
Or let's say I'm better than that.
Okay.
Then a lot of the times it's like, okay, like let's say those people that aren't awake enough. Yeah, I mean, you just use it as an example. Somebody who's on tap to get every vaccine that gets rolled out because Pfizer or Moderna put it out there, and that is the way to get well. And I think within myself, man, you got all the proof to know that's not the right way. So that is a split between me and my brother. My brother's going to come at me with a certain thing. I have my thing. And I'm not going to go, well, maybe a little of this, a little of that. Maybe we're both right in our own way. How can I hope for that person to be happy within that worldview? I have to, again, relax my focus. And I don't always do that. To relax my focus, to say, to get in their skin, I realize I want them to be happy. I want them to be whole. I want them to be healed.
Right.
Phil, drop your big idea about Pfizer and Moderna. Drop your big idea about vaccines in general and get into that person's skin.
Right.
You know, that is their responsible choice. Let their responsible choices become responsible for them in a way that I can't understand.
Both sides are acting out of what they think is the safest prognosis for themselves.
Right. Safety is what they're looking for.
That's what they're looking for.
Right.
And so when we recognize that we have different views.
So you're saying
on that.
switch the language to safety as opposed to Moderna, Pfizer versus
Absolutely,
putting up a
because
wall.
You want their safety. You want their health, and you want the same for yourself. That's where your sameness is.
Right, because if they are a projection of me, okay, I'm projecting on. Put it this way, I'm projecting onto them. Chances are really, really good that projection is telling me that I too have what I would consider, if I could see it correctly, I am exercising a limited view.
Yeah, because the person on the other side is thinking you're not being safe and you're a threat to me and others.
Right.
And on your side, you're thinking you're being safe and you're a threat to me and others. So you have exactly the same thought system going on. They're just different ways of protecting the body. And when we realize that that's what we're doing, it's a total, or both sides are acting out of fear. Both sides are acting out of fear. So you want the fear to go away, and you want to pray or extend that what we want is health and wholeness on both sides, so we can see each other as the same. I don't want to be afraid of my brother, and I don't want them to be afraid of me based on my ideologies that I've made my decisions on about how I need to protect my body. And that's all people are ever doing, is trying to protect their body. I mean, I know it looks like right now the Jews against the Hamas or something, but trust me, they're trying to protect their bodies on the Gaza Strip, and they're trying to protect their bodies in the parts of Israel.
Yeah, everybody.
And then obviously there's an existential threat on both sides to their core belief systems. So I mean, nonetheless, if you were to look inside of them, both of them are doing exactly the same thing, and the war will continue until they can recognize, and until I can recognize the same thing about the simplest things, those kinds of things that you said about health and things like that, where we have differences of opinion, that we're acting out of fear. And so long as we're acting out of fear for the protection of something of this world, it will stay divided. We will always stay divided, and we will not know the unification that this is talking about.
Well, if I listen
remember myself, there's no way I can remember myself in those positions.
Right. Well, if I listen to the Course, if I jump into the, let's say the shoes of the author of the Course in Miracles, they're going to say neither side in the, let's say the vaccine issue. If I dial it in, neither side is even close to the correct view.
Right.
The correct view is beyond all of those things. So one is as wrong as the other.
That's right.
And so that until I can recognize that my view of the other side's quote-unquote wrongness is really a reflection of the only reality in that projection is that I'm wrong as well in a way that I don't recognize.
Correct.
That's why I have the projection. Mm-hmm. And the Course is saying, all right, you're wrong, they're wrong. As it said before, everyone's insane. Everyone.
Right.
You know, your brother's insane, you're insane, everybody's crazy given this thing. The only way out is to recognize that. That's, again, taking responsibility. Nothing I'm seeing is correct. And the only thing that can be done is to turn that over to the Holy Spirit.
Absolutely. Yeah.
For correction.
Yes.
So that I can see something that resembles the mind of God.
Even in my desire to know myself wholly, to desire the wholeness that is God, I have to reach out for help. It doesn't say to do it alone. It says that my little willingness, but I have to desire it wholly nonetheless. The desire has to be whole, and I need to approach it with a little willingness, because I can't do it alone. I can't recognize the truth of who I am and remember without that relaxation that you're talking about, without quieting for a moment, so the Holy Spirit can reach through. It's the extension that reaches through so that it can connect me in my little willingness that desires wholly to reach the mind of God that is always whole and has always been there for me. So that's the way I'm going to leave this. That's my only method that I know to do that. And obviously it means that I need to, quote, take time out of my day. And that's what the lessons are about, is taking 5 minutes an hour, or taking those 20 minutes in the morning or 20 minutes in the evening, depending on the lesson that's been given.
Or just saying it to yourself one time.
Yes.
But being positioned toward remembering rather than just blowing it off.
Yeah. And also, when I say what it's asking me to contemplate, to desire to know what it's asking me to say, which is like, I am created as God created me, or something.
I am as God created me.
Yes, I am as God created me. And to, what does that mean? I have to want and desire to know what that truly means, so that if I take my 5 minutes an hour or whatever, that will be full. That I'm asking it fully, not partially. And you can actually feel when those desires are real. I mean, you're not holding something back. There's something in you that's a recognition that I'm holding something back when I say it. Will I say it enough so that I'm not holding anything back, and that I really do want to know what it is that I am as God created me?
Now, and I agree with you. I agree completely. Yeah. And I just wanted to say, just from personal experience and also just seeing the way these things work, going through the lessons, going through the Course, it's like, as they say, buckle up, buttercup kind of a thing, in terms of when the ego is undone, there's a sense of vulnerability, loss, and exposure. A lot of the structures that I have used to protect myself or to fortify my experience somehow, when those become softer or they go away, you feel it. You feel it, and it's and it can be something akin to a mellowness, depression. It can be different things, or fear in some ways.
I don't know that. I think it works the opposite for me. I feel at peace. There's usually a peace that
the
comes
Course
upon
tells
me.
you in the text. I don't know if you didn't pay attention to that part. It warns you.
Oh, that the ego will fight back.
Yeah, you
absolutely.
will have you.
Yes, it will. But I'm saying, if I reach out and I begin to experience the truth of my wholeness, usually it brings some peace to me. Now, through my day, there might be repercussions for my ego. As soon as those moments happen, sometimes it's like other things come up, because it doesn't want, my ego doesn't want me to remember.
Right.
I would say that both happen. I mean, both where I, in the quiet moments that I spend doing the Course, I may actually experience those lightness of being and a peace that comes over me. But now I'm going to go about my day, and all of a sudden, I get tripped up doing something, no matter what it is. And it's almost as if those trip ups happen on purpose after I have experienced those moments of remembering, almost to say, see, you're still as vulnerable as you ever were. The ego will definitely come in back at me in those ways. So I agree about that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess that's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.